Remember that documentary that came out in 2016 about furries? It made somewhat of a splash, or more of a ripple, in mainstream circles at least. I'm guessing for a lot of people it was their first exposure to furry, outside of like that one CSI episode, maybe a few passing news stories. It's the first piece of media I can think of that seems to at least try to represent the fandom seriously, though in my opinion it seriously stumbled at that hurdle. Get it? Though perhaps I am getting ahead of myself. Fursona is a 2016 documentary directed by first-time feature filmmaker Dominic Rodriguez. The film follows a cast of furries across a multitude of interviews, interspersed with footage of the furries, going about their lives and such. Pretty standard documentary format for this subgenre of, examination of niche subculture and community. There's definitely a lot of the same energy as something like Louis Theroux's Weird Weekends and the like. The film is generally well shot, its sound mixing is good, nothing's muddy, a fault you often see with first-time or amateur directors like this. The film has really nice stylistic touches, like when we're introduced to one of the film's subject, we get a small animated card that shows that person's fursona. This is a good way to show the importance of that person's fursona. Hey, look, that's the name of the film. And it lets the audience know how this person likes to present themselves. The film is tonally very heartfelt in a way that honestly borders on kind of saccharine sometimes. Overall, it's a well put together documentary, technically well executed with a clear intention of showing the fandom in a nuanced light, and I do not like it. It's been over 10 years since the film came out. Does it still work as a showcase of furry? As I stated, the film is well put together. I don't have any fault with it on that front, but I do have issue with the story this documentary is trying to tell. And some of you may be thinking, it's a documentary, surely the story is just what's there. Well, no, especially for a doc like this. The way that the film is edited together, the subjects chosen and included, all present a narrative to the viewer. Frankly, I don't think the film ever does a very good job at educating people as to what the heck furry even is. This comes down to the aforementioned subjects of the film, the people being interviewed. It's like all fursuiters, and a few dubious options who are extremely out of step with the wider fandom. For example, the first person being interviewed is Boomer the dog. I'd like to preface my upcoming discussion with the fact that I have no issue with Boomer and that they have received a significant amount of harassment from furries and others, all of it unjustified. What I do take issue with is the fact that they are very much an atypical example of a furry. Boomer is a guy from Pennsylvania who is extremely in touch with his dog side. They have said that they believe themselves to be half dog and half human. Their legal name was changed to Boomer the dog, which very much represents their arc in this film. They eat out of a dog bowl, they live with other dog-adjacent things. Most furries don't see their relationship with their fursona this way. This is closer to the Therian or otherkin subculture, and while this falls under the wider umbrella of furry, it is still a distinctive thing. The film's decision to open on Boomer is then a perplexing one. The filmmakers must know this about furries. It's all the more baffling to me if a person didn't know what furry is or had an incomplete understanding, they are going to be presented with a very atypical member of the fandom as their first point of contact. As a subject of the doc, he makes sense to me, they're somewhat high profile. It just makes me question what the goal of this documentary even was. The director, Dominic Rodriguez, has said that his aim was to make a character study and show a personal story of the people in the film. I always wanted the film to be about more than furries. It was never meant to be an educational kind of documentary, which is why there are a lot of things left unclarified in it. People have Google and they can find out the specific lingo we use and things like that easily. The aim is respectable, however, with an insular community like this that has a lot of jargon and slang, I feel the median viewer is going to be completely lost. Particular subcommunities, such as furry, have a lot of misunderstanding and misinterpretation among the wider public, so you need to be extra careful. As it stands, the choice of subject puts the attention on fursuiters, performers, and furry infighting. Oh, we'll get to that, don't you worry, over other things. A personal story is fine, but unfortunately you are representing the wider fandom with the piece, even if your goal is to follow personal stories. Most furries aren't like Boomer, or at least don't go as far as he does. He is a major subject of the documentary, and we go back to him regularly. It seems like the crew had a lot of material. In the opening to the film, Boomer is showing off their colossal-sized scrapbook full of pictures of dogs they have collected, explaining how this sort of behaviour is easier to explain now, pointing to furries. During the film, we follow him, probably the closest of any of the film's subjects, his history running a radio, early media attention, and watching them go around in their suit. The film follows loosely his struggle with trying to get his name legally changed to Boomer the dog and getting rejected by the courts. This isn't entirely out of the realm of possibility. I know somebody who has changed their name to be their Fursona's name, but it's still on the more extreme end of furry, the far side of the hobbyist to lifestyle spectrum. Most furs are somewhere in the middle of this. Boomer is all the way on the other end. And yes, even in the director's own words, this is more about individual people, but the doc is still going to represent furry. And it got a decent amount of mainstream attention. It is going to shape how people think about furries for a lot of folk. Oh, for anyone who's not aware of the hobbyist to lifestyle furry dichotomy, furries exist on an axis. On one end, the hobbyist. The low end of this is tangentially furry. They like the art, hang around furry spaces, watch the big furry things that come out, maybe they have a fursona, or maybe not. The other end is the lifestyler. This is the people who live and breathe furry. All their friends are furry, they socialise at fur meets and furcons, they have or desperately want a fursuit, they spend a lot of their income on furry art, furry merch, and almost exclusively wear furry t-shirts. They use their fursona name more than their legal name if they haven't gotten it changed. Most furries are probably somewhere in the centre of this axis, the enlightened centrist furry, we can say. But based on the rhetoric of this documentary's opening, it makes it seem like furry exists on the lifestyle end of the spectrum, and not to spoil anything, but that does continue throughout. Now, of course, this is only a very short opening, and the next thing we are shown is footage of Uncle Kage giving a better rundown of Furry at Anthrocon. I'm going to save talking about Kage's involvement till later, because, well, the doc does a very strange thing with him. We'll get to it. Look forward to that. As I mentioned, this film is almost exclusively shows people on the more life end of the furry scale, the people who live and breathe furry in their day-to-day lives. Bringing us to the next subject of the film, Diesel the Raccoon. Diesel the Raccoon. Where do I start with Diesel the Raccoon? This guy is emblematic of my issues with this film, a subject chosen that gets across a very poor version of the fandom, and frankly that shouldn't have had a platform to tell his story. The director talks about wanting to tell personal vignettes, to show off people's personal stories. Well, some people shouldn't get to tell their story, especially when they're being a representative of an entire community. Diesel is a gay American baby fur with public far-right white nationalist views. To say he is not a good representation of the furry fandom is a massive understatement. Diesel is the sort of person that the fandom doesn't want to associate with on the whole. He continues to post on Twitter regularly, and it's almost exclusively anti-trans, anti-non-white hate speech, or talking about how he feels victimized for being a conservative. The documentary addresses none of this, despite the fact that this was known at the time when they were recording. That's all we're going to say on Diesel, because to look into him anymore means exposing myself to more of his hateful rhetoric, and frankly, the diaper pics of a fascist furry were not on my bingo card for this year. Going back to Boomer for a second, as for where he is now, well, he's still doing the same old thing he's been doing for some time now, though appears to be less active online than he once was. I personally wish him all the best. His arc is one of the film's stronger points, with his struggle to be recognised for who he is. It's good storytelling. His reoccurring segments in the film, and trying to get his name legally changed, is a good through line, where one is lacking for many of the film's other subjects. It's crazy that this was even an issue to me, honestly. Like, just let him be cool. Let him be Boomer. Let him be called Boomer. He's not hurting anybody. Grix and his partner Quad are the next subjects of the film. Grix is a fox who seems like a pretty standard fur, honestly. A 420 fur whose fur affinity profile proudly states that right next to him being a BMW fur. Well, maybe not. We'll come back to Grix a lot in the doc. He's kind of the voice of reason throughout the film. I will say, however, it's yet another fursuiter. It's a cool fursuiter, and it's nice seeing an example of fursuiting that's sort of being in character and showing how Grix in suit is more open and animated. That's cool. He's, of course, a showcase of the large drug fur community, and yeah, that's a big subgroup and should be talked about. You know, unlike the fash furs, who shouldn't be in a documentary. Grix seems to still be active in the fandom to this day, using FA a lot, though I can't speak to things like his con attendance. You know what's cute? A furry who's a parent and raising his kid. Freya seems extremely sweet, and showing off a furry parent is very neat to me. Raising his kid and showing off furry and fursuiters. And the kid seems chill and happy with it. Really puts a dampener on the arguments often made against furries as a community. Freya seems to have stepped back from the community, although I don't know. Maybe he's still more active in the local scene, but his socials haven't been updated for a while from what I saw. Shadow Bandit, or just Bandit, is more of a down-to-earth furry. It's yet another fursuiter, so despite being told about the diversity of the fandom, we are only showed suitors. So, well, what would you think after watching this documentary if you didn't know what furry was already? Regardless, he seems like a very chill guy. It's hard to get a real grasp on what he thought, but from the little glimpses I got from the doc, and looking through his remaining socials, he seemed lovely. Sadly, Bandit passed away in 2020, but based on what I've seen, he was an important figure to many people, including the director. The film's next subject is Sky. Sky is great. They show more diversity to the fandom by talking about the massive importance of fursuit dancing, and that furries are almost always part of the alphabet mafia. They talk well, they're actually a super good dancer, and it's nice to see more of the niche sub-communities under the umbrella of furry. As for where Sky is now, dunno. It's a very common name, and the link on Wikifur for the documentary doesn't take me to anything relevant. Some pages have been removed at request, so maybe they're looking to be more private. But at least from what I saw, they seem great. More importantly, they gave a much-needed break from the cavalcade of fursuiters, though they are still a fursuiter. You get what I'm saying. The next section of the doc is probably the most divisive thing about it, and that's the interview with Varka. Varka is the founder of Bad Dragon, a fantasy dildo company who makes adult toys modelled on real and fictional animals that predominantly serve the furry community. I like this interview. Varka is actually an active member of the furry community running a business by and for furries. It presents the more risque aspects of the fandom in a very normal way. Oh, and this shot is insane. This does present a turning point for the doc, however, as it moves into, more furry infighting, basically. Yep, half of this documentary is about the furry drama cycle, and in particular the fight between the not-safe-for-work side of the fandom that wishes to keep furry weird, a never-ending debate between sub-communities of furry who have always been part of the fandom wishing to stay there, and the burned furs who want everything to look like a Mormon church. Goodie. It's about time we address the cockroach in the room. Uncle Kage is, at time of writing, the chair of Anthrocon, a major public figure in the fandom. He is famous for running one of the world's largest cons, talking at many furry conventions over the years. A standout persona of a man in a lab coat holding a glass of wine and ranting about stuff and telling stories. Uncle Kage's Story Hour is a fixture of conventions all over the world, and he's one of the most recognisable figures in the fandom. I'm going to put some of my biases on the table here. Watching Uncle Kage, among others, talk helps me realise the furriness about myself. Looking into Furry online, he is one of the first figures you'll find, and the way he spoke about the community drew me in. I don't know if I would be who I am today, have the friends I have without that. I have met and spoken to Kage and attended a live story hour hosted at the UK convention Confronts. I consider him a figure who has had a positive impact on me. Okay, bias declared. I think that the way Fursona uses Kage as a figure is a little odd. Almost half of this film is about Kage in one way or another. People's differing opinions on him, responding to what he has said, framing his arguments, and then showing alternatives. The doc actually opens with Kage talking about the fandom and summing it up in a very positive way. It's very sweet, and then we have the rest of the documentary focusing on the furry not safe for work debate. We kind of had to work backwards with him, knowing that we'd have to build up his image as the kind, trustworthy authority figure in the film before revealing that other side to him. I do think it's worth mentioning that the second half shouldn't necessarily negate the first half. I think he says a lot of beautiful things about the fandom, and I think he does believe them, even if he isn't always consistent. In my opinion, it seems like the director has a bit of a hang-up about Kage. The crew were kicked out of Anthrocon for filming there, and they apparently approached Kage, who wanted near editorial creative control on the finished cut before agreeing to an interview. Dominic has framed this as an interesting creative choice in the final cut, us only getting the Kage persona, but well, that's kind of convenient to me. Kage as a voice really sounds like he's missing from the final doc. The actual Kage, not the on-screen, on-stage persona from clips downloaded from YouTube. Kage does interviews. He has spoken to news outlets, he has sat down to talk with furries. You can find an interview with this man from before Fursona came out, but it's by other furries. He will talk to you about his fandom with other members of his fandom. And when approached by a first-time director turning a school project into a feature, yeah, I probably would say no unless I get to check out the finished project as well. I must ask, how did the filmmakers approach him and Anthrocon? It seems like they just rocked up and started filming people and then got kicked out and banned from the convention based on how it's presented. Bear in mind that this team had never made a documentary before, and with how poor the reputation of Furry was at the time, I think it's completely reasonable to be turned down. With the Kage persona we get in the doc, as I say, it's not entirely one-sided, but Fursona focuses a lot on the inflammatory things he has said, and yes, Kage is a controversial figure. And his language is sometimes inflammatory. He often wields his power over Anthrocon like a cudgel, to the extent that it's a meme. Some of the stuff he says about Boomer and Chu is unacceptable bullying. It is worth pointing out again that this is an exaggerated persona, a stand-up routine. And, well, at the time it was kinda considered more acceptable to speak in this way. It was 2014, man, I don't know. Actually, Tu Griffin was still doing stand-up at this point, and his entire persona was going on long rants. He and Kage regularly appeared together and were friends. This was before Tu Griffin was banned from speaking at Anthrocon, and then fell down an alt-right pipeline. His last appearance was at America's Anthro Convention, a right-wing furrycon that imploded after 2 years and was widely nicknamed FashCon by the rest of the community. This isn't a knock against Kage, I feel like Tu's more extreme views were yet to come out at this point, more to illustrate the kind of comedy that was popular in the fandom at this moment in time. Probably also worth mentioning that a lot of what Kage talks about when it comes to the media is in relation to him running a convention. He needs Anthrocon to have a good reputation so that it can continue to be run, and that's why he, in particular, has such a stranglehold on the perception of furry. The things he says about chloroforming furries when the media comes around are in relation to him being the chair of a con that relies on locals' goodwill to continue running each year. I feel that attitude and extreme defensiveness makes a lot more sense put into this context. The director has spoken about how a big thing explored in the doc is how people put their fandom first. When talking about the more risque aspects, the idea of identity as a furry overtakes your personality. But that takes on a whole new level when a tank to furry reputation could directly affect your ability to run a massive convention. Of course, the dichotomy of the furry drama cycle, TM, debate continues with the next subjects of the film, True Fox and Tomcat. The two garnered a significant amount of backlash and harassment when they appeared on TV and talked about how they bang in fursuit. This crashed Fur Affinity, twice, and resulted in their account eventually being banned. I want to say that any harassment these two received is unacceptable. This is not the sort of thing I want to see, and it's never okay. The fact that they crashed the site is just disheartening, to say the least. That said, there was a lot of non-harassment around this that was more respectfully disagreeing. This was a sensational thing, and in Fursona, True talks about how they were told to play up for the camera. Her desire was to come on and to try and present the fandom in a good light, and that wasn't what they had the chance to do. I don't think appearing on TV like this was a good idea, because, well, you have to be extremely gullible to go on the Tyra Banks show in a segment about weird sex, and think you're not going to be presented in a hyperbolic way. That, by extension, presents the entire furry fandom in the same light. Although this is me falling into the trap that the director seems to be so interested in. Why should it matter that what you want to talk about comes back to the fandom? And why so much vitriol? Why put your personal desire of what you want to talk about over the reputation of your community? I do think that having this spectrum of people and opinions in the film is an admirable attempt to show the diversity of opinion in furry, and create a more personal series of stories. Though how well this is succeeded at is debatable. Every subject in the doc is a fursuiter and is very comfortable in suit, with some only ever being interviewed and shown in their fursuit. Were no artists, musicians, con organisers, writers, influencers willing to appear? As it stands, that's a pretty narrow perspective, and in terms of showing the diversity of the fandom, it fails by only showing one way people engage with furry. Most furries don't own a suit. They are hella expensive, and they take a lot of time to make yourself. Not that you would know this from the film, of course. It makes the finished project feel very weird to me as a furry. It's why Varka feels so refreshing. But truly, I feel like anyone watching this without knowledge of furry is going to be leaving with a lot of misconceptions. It makes sense. They are the people that the filmmakers could get who were willing to speak to them. They are, for the most part, folks who are willing to play for the camera a little. Suitors naturally fall into this because we truly are all attention seekers and camera whores. There's no talk here about what becoming a furry really means. We know what relationship each furry has to the fandom, but we don't see any kind of journey within it. This brings me to a wider point. There's a much better documentary hidden inside of this one that didn't get made. It relates to the last furry subject in this documentary. Video is a furry with a wolf persona. He's deeply fascinated about the fandom and what it means to people. He came out as a furry after meeting his boyfriend. He also happens to be the film's director. The reveal of this happened in a very blink and you'll miss it sort of way. We get one of the film's title cards, and then we cut to the director, and from this point on, he becomes a significantly more present figure on camera. Coming out as a furry apparently happened partway through filming. My efforts to distance myself from the community, of course, were hurting the film. If I wanted my subjects to be honest with me, I would have to be honest with them. Once I outed myself, interviews became much deeper because I grew more comfortable with asserting my own opinions. I would get into heated debates with furries about the importance of self-expression versus good public image. I became Dominic the Furry. This, to me, is a far more interesting story. A person denying or hiding the furry side of themselves for years, using the excuse of objective anthropologic study as an excuse and eventually coming out, trying to engage with a community from the standpoint of study, only to reveal that you are and have always been a part of it. This narrative isn't really in the film. It sort of is, but we never get a sit-down interview with Video like we do the film's other subjects. Have the tables turned on Video and have him look down the lens of a camera and address his opinions. Since the film came out, Video has been very open. He has spoken about his obsession with werewolf transformation, his ownership of several wolf-shaped toys, and how he has gotten other people who didn't think they were into fursuits to change their mind. Why is this not in the documentary? It's honest and vulnerable, and you can talk about what this documentary and this fandom means to you. It's so frustrating that it's a film about Kage and the drama cycle instead. Why is there not an interview where we interview Video, who talks about their personal attachment to the topic? This also hurts the film's subjects. If Video approached people saying he was making a documentary about coming to terms with his furriness or his personal relationship with the fandom, more people would have been willing to talk to him. I don't know for a fact that Kage would have been more likely to agree to speak to him if he knew he was a furry, but it seems likely from what I know about him. This sort of almost stealth reveal feels cowardly to me. If you are a furry, own it like Boomer. Get on camera and tell us how you think fursuits are hot, and that you think that should be normal, and you don't like that the fandom keeps being coy about it. How you think part of the taboo nature of it is what's attractive. But I don't know, perhaps all of this confidence came later. 10 years removed and the fandom is at a different place than it was. People have kind of moved on overall. Well, not the reputation thing. A lot of mainstream people are still demonizing us, and the US government has a very weird vendetta. But the furry drama cycle is now basically entirely baby furs and pup hoods, looping around forever and ever like an Ouroboros. Thankfully, the film I wanted Fursonas to be sort of exists now. Rukus is a documentary and a recreation of the director's life. It's weird, in a good way. The film is about director Brett Hanover and his relationship with a furry named Rukus, set in the liminal spaces of furry conventions. The film is a shockingly honest look at what coming to terms with who you are is. What it feels like to start exploring yourself and discovering a community who accepts you and meeting some truly eccentric people. I know this feeling, this liminality of existing in a fandom. The small side rooms of a con where you're up at 3 a.m. drunk having a conversation about your relationship with God. Vibing around with a weirdo you just met, talking to an online friend while he's wearing a tail and you're shy about it. Realising that you're not just queer but into some extremely weird stuff. Awkward and uncomfortable experiences with people when you're trying to figure out who you are and what you like, and it's not good for anyone. Twinges of pain at the deep cringe of who you are and what you like because you didn't know yet. I became a furry when I was like 14. I was deeply lonely and found a community who got me and helped me to discover my sexuality. And Rukus captures that feeling perfectly. The transitional state where you don't understand who you are yet. It's beautiful, and you can watch it for free online. I'll provide a link somewhere. Hey, if you want a doc that's actually about what furries are, Ash Fox has The Fandom, a film that covers the history, culture, and community of the furry fandom. Hey look, Kage is in it, and the film doesn't shy away from talking about the not safe for work side of things without bogging the entire film down in it. The Fandom is also free online and highly worth your time. In my opinion, The Fandom and Rukus together make a combined exploration of furry far more in tune with what Video and his team were attempting in 2016. Fursona has value as a piece discussing the fandom's drama as it was in 2016, but ultimately falls flat as a character study and as a teaching tool. I think this project is brave and I'm glad it exists. Some great discussions have come out of it. Oh, and Video, if you're watching, I hope you're still a part of the fandom, and I hope that it's brought as much positive influence on your life as it has mine. To everyone else, go watch Rukus. While not for everyone, it's worth giving a go. Oh, and thanks for watching.